Player 3 here, winding the clock back to 1797 in Transylvania. That's right, it's Castlevania Symphony of the Night. Taking it back further, well, not from the setting, but just under 200 years after that, when the idea for the game began. At the end of 1994, a new Castlevania game was announced to be released on the 32X. The soundtrack and even a playable demo were completed. However, Konami scrapped the project as the PlayStation was just being released and wanted to focus on this new console with 32-bit graphics as opposed to Sega's console add-on with the same capability. Toru Hagihara was placed as director as well as a producer of the new Castlevania project, as he did direct the last installment, Rondo of Blood, known in Japan as Dracula X, with Koji Igarashi as scenario writer and programmer, and Mikiru Yamane, who handled all of the sound design from the music to sound effects. I can't express enough how impressed I am from her sound work. I'll definitely be bringing that up later. All three of these developers were interviewed soon after the release of Symphony of the Night in 1997, and they had much to tell about the process of taking on this great challenge to bring the Castlevania franchise into the newest generation of gaming consoles, and to further interest among players. Some of the biggest challenges came from the parameters of the new console, wanting to keep the game as a side-scroller, which the PlayStation had no hardware support for, so coming up with a workaround by displaying character sprites in the same way they would display backgrounds to reach the same effect, though this method ate up a lot of processing power to achieve. Another implementation of this new game was replayability, implemented in the second Castlevania installment, Simon's Quest, an RPG element, gaining XP and collecting gear. Along with that, allowing the player to go back to previous areas and solving puzzles in search of better gear and leveling up their character. As opposed to a linear path as before, the game could be explored and beaten through a number of different avenues. This mechanic of free roaming is what led to the name of a new subgenre, Metroidvania, as you can guess, deriving from both the Metroid and Castlevania franchises, utilizing this free roaming within an action-adventure platform genre setting. Many will say that Symphony of the Night got the initial idea for the ability to free roam from Metroid. However, Igarashi stated that he drew inspiration from the Legend of Zelda series. The developers also made some bold decisions for the new game, going with a non-Belmont related character, Alucard, son of Dracula, and with all the weapon choices, the iconic whip not being one of them. Also adding familiars, which you can acquire throughout the game, which Hagihara stated was a last-minute addition and were not balanced with regard to the player using a familiar. The PlayStation was an early example of games entering into a 3D space. However, compared to what we have today, there were fewer polygons it was capable of rendering during gameplay, and thus could at times look worse than a 2D game, with hand-drawn pixel art. Igarashi stated his disdain for the quality of those 3D graphics that were utilized only briefly in the opening cinematic, and another one later in the game. The majority of the game being comprised of pixel art, designed by illustrator Ayami Kojima, as her debut into the video game industry. And might I say, she absolutely crushed it. The visuals in this game are gorgeous. I believe I've covered a great deal here. Without further ado, Castlevania Symphony of the Night. Upon opening the game, we are greeted with what sounds like a prayer hymn as we select a new game file and a name. Then the intro cinematic, showcasing the exterior of Dracula's castle in all of the PlayStation polygon glory. Boy oh boy, I really am glad the whole game isn't this, made with these PlayStation 3D graphics. It would have been ass if it did. Then into the game itself, playing as Richter Belmont, replaying the last level of Rondo of Blood, the precursor to what is to come. And we have Dracula's classic line,
"What is a man? A miserable little pile of secrets!"
Upon defeating Dracula, we learn of the setting that brings us to the present day. We are to assume the role of Alucard, son of Dracula, who is woken to the evil forces of his father tugging at his soul, beckoning you once again to Dracula's castle. Long before taking on this game, I'd briefly played the intro to Simon's Quest, but other than that, my only experience with Castlevania has been the original game on the NES. I absolutely love that game, and honestly wasn't sure if any other game in the franchise could surpass that in my mind. Having a lot of nostalgia for it, but at least the start of Symphony of the Night, the entrance to the castle being reminiscent of the entrance from the original, Not sure how many of the other games compare, but for me at least, I really enjoyed that. Navigating through the character menu, there was a lot to look at, though I didn't really pay too much attention to the stats on the left side anyway. Opening the game manual, it explains the different mechanics of the game, though not much in the way of story or what to expect. Not sure if I like or dislike that. What it does tell you, besides the controls, is the move sets for the characters you play as, the prologue, which you also see after playing the intro with Richter, and a brief synopsis of each character that has voice lines that you'll encounter throughout the game. Beyond that, it does explain the character status menus, how to read the map overlay, the special weapons and rooms, such as the long library and save rooms. Other than that, we'll just have to jump into the game and see what awaits us. Right off the bat, the classic entrance to the castle, like I said before, is reminiscent of the original game, and the music, so good. And the first of many characters we meet is Death, an ally of Dracula's. He tells us to stop this foolish quest, and when Alucard declines, he takes all of Alucard's S-tier gear. It'll be a long time until we get a chance to get all those back. Now we reach the first boss, technically second, because Dracula from the intro is a boss we must beat. So, calling this the second boss, Slogra and Gaibon, was a lot harder than I expected, and it was a rude awakening to how hard this game was actually going to be. Granted, I had a lot of good gear taken away, and all that I had was a short sword, but after that, there would be 21 more bosses to go. But about a third of those were optional, and I didn't even encounter. Either way, I had a long way to go, and a lot more area to explore. The castle is huge. Soon after this fight, we meet Maria for the first time, Maria Renard, sister-in-law to Richter Belmont. We saw her briefly in the intro level helping Richter defeat Dracula. After learning of Richter's disappearance, she entered the castle on a quest of her own to find him. After I made the long journey up the entrance, through the long hallway of the marble gallery, and to the outer wall at the back of the castle, I made it to the next boss. Myself. Doppelganger 10. As the name suggests, he's Alucard, but level 10. So, being close to that or exceeding that is best. I was around level 8, so it was a bit of a challenge, but he didn't seem as hard as Slogra and Gaibon. So at this point, probably saying we are entering spoiler territory, so if you wish to avoid those, skip to this time here or press the timestamp in the description. I went through many different weapon builds and armor throughout my playthrough. The first of many swords I got was Gladius, a big improvement from the short sword. Also at this point I realized my dude Alucard looks like he runs as part of the Scooby Gang. Along with the many different bosses and many different gear builds, there are so many different enemies too. My god, some classics like the zombies, which I always thought were witches in the original game, and the Medusa heads, some I've never seen before, and some ranging from funny to really f***ing annoying. I like the names of the enemies showing up on screen. It got me thinking, with all that, I know there have been a few 3D Castlevania games, but a modern take on that, like a Souls-like game? Dude, that would be so fucking amazing. I really hope that's something Konami considers, with the rise of all these Souls-like games that have been out recently. Back to the outer wall, we have a different enemy on each stair level. Some look like they could be a boss fight, like this dude. And we even have Papyrus from Undertale. The clock tower here is a bit too hard for me right now, so I'm going back down to the long library. And in the very back, you meet the Master Librarian. He's so gullible. I'm sorry, what did he say? Like you? I'm pretty sure he's actually saying thank you, but damn, it really sounds like he says like you after I buy something. I hate it. And boy, do I want to buy more stuff from him. Lucky for me, there's a spot nearby that I can farm this 100 coin bag. Yeah, you might say that's not a fair way to play the game, but deal with it. The game allows it, and it's funny. Slowly I am learning spells and collecting runes, and I am able to use more of my magical powers. Like now I am able to unlock the blue magical doors to access those areas. After much more exploring and backtracking to find ways to enter blocked off areas, I found a teleporter room. And upon finding the second teleporter room, I was able to utilize the teleporter by simply standing in front of the opening and pressing up. It teleports you to the different teleporters you found, and you stop whenever you arrive at the area you want. From here, I made my way to the Royal Chapel, and after reaching the top of the stairs and through multiple towers and corridors, I met another boss, the Hippogriff. Upon defeating this mythical creature, which I could not find out why it was fighting under the banner of Dracula, but Maria was watching the battle and was impressed by Alucard's supernatural powers, then proceeds to roast my ass. Well, I made it as far as I could in that direction, so I consulted the map and found another doorway to an area I haven't been to, So I started making my way down, underground, to the underground caverns. Here I met a nice ferryman who took me on a journey. Then I drowned. Okay, not much here. Things were starting to get more difficult, not necessarily the enemies. I was leveling up and most of my journey was backtracking back and forth trying to find new items and areas. In my journeys, I did end up finding a Frankfurter and some nice New York pizza. Damn, Dracula's got some taste. My next step was making it to the Colosseum, and finally I found Richter. I did it! Wait, something is not right here. Richter's a dick. After this, things started to change around the castle, most notably this heavy fog, and my mood. I was getting a little pissed off that I wasn't making any progress. But then it happened. After only 8 hours, I got the ability to transform into a bat, and my god, this changed everything. Things got super easy. I could get to almost every area I couldn't get to before. This was like switching to creative mode in Minecraft. It just felt like I was cheating, but it was part of the game, and I was beginning to enjoy myself again. But I couldn't dwell on that for long though. I was now able to reach new areas and just fly past enemies I didn't care to fight again for the 100th time. The boss fights were a different story, however, and definitely were getting harder. Olrox, which I have in my notes as the first tough boss, which is just over halfway through the mandatory boss fights, but I got better gear. I switched special weapons, I fought another boss, then I was starting to make my way down, to the abandoned mines and the catacombs, the furthest areas down you can get to in the game. And oh boy, I was not a fan of this area. It was eerie, and this boss, the Grand Falloon, that was a fight and a half. Oh my god. And after this shit show, I made it all the way back up and fought Richter. At least I tried. Twice. Then realized there's no fucking way. Then being confused at the sudden difficulty spike, consulting the good old internet and learned I wasn't actually supposed to fight him, and needed to find a few certain items to fight the thing that was controlling Richter. Oh, so that's why Richter's acting this way. It's right on. We're in the end game now, and essentially a new game, a harder game, because the castle is inverted, and I need to discover every area again, and fight new and harder bosses. Though this sounds like it's going to take me another 10 hours to get through this part now, since it's the castle all over again, and the menu says I'm 93% of the way through the game. Is it just lying to me? But with having those 10 hours of exploration behind me, even while it was inverted, I had a really good sense of where to go, and with a lot of help from the bat transformation. So I fought the bosses, got the 5 treasures, Dracula's relics, and thought it was time to end this. But just like in Elden Ring, the final boss fight consisted of me fighting 2 bosses in succession, with the same health. My health, that is. And Dracula fared to be way more difficult than I thought. I mean, yeah, it's Dracula, but damn. I threw everything I had and he'd still kill me in like 5 hits. Maybe I shouldn't have just flown over all the enemies in the inverted castle. So, I did some grinding and tried to get some better gear. And at this point, I'm gonna disappoint you all, because at this point of the game, as of reading this script, I still have yet to beat Dracula. And I'm still trying to get the Prismagrim? That's how you say it. Some special sword, great sword. I'm 99% of the way through the game. It's just Dracula to go. But I haven't beat the game. I haven't got near as far into the original Castlevania, but I played that enough to know that it's still one of my favorite retro games of all time. With that being said though, being this far into the game, I believe I can still form an opinion on the game, minus the very end. So that's exactly what I'm doing. But what opinion did everyone else have back at the release in 1997? It's hard to say which is the better release. In Japan, the game also came with a short manga depicting the setting of the story, but the American and European versions had the line, "What is a man?" in the prologue. Despite this being a fantastic game, in America, the game just wasn't expected to do well, so it was underfunded and under-advertised, which inevitably led to the game not doing so well. Kinda sounds like their own fault there. Despite that, this game has gone down as one of the fan favorites of the Castlevania franchise, and is often found on PlayStation Top Games lists, and critics at the time adored the game, some giving it perfect scores, but all the ones I could see were giving it at least an 8 out of 10. As for me, I'm not giving it a perfect score, but, well, that means, yet again, the Secret of Monkey Island remains at the top. But I will say, this is my new favorite Castlevania game, without a doubt. Before starting this game, I speculated I'd be giving it an 8 out of 10, and I'm happy to say that I beat my expectations. So I'm giving it an 8.75 out of 10. Out of the 21 games I've played so far in this series, it currently sits in 4th place. This is such a great game series. It sucks that there hasn't been a new release in 10 years. Like I said before, it would be so fucking awesome if they made a Soulsborne Castlevania game. My god, can you imagine? One can hope. Anyways, if you like this game, go try it out for yourself. If you have any game recommendations, leave them in the comments below. I hope you've enjoyed this video and I hope you'll enjoy what I have in store. That's all for now. See you next time.